the DTx Circle podcast by Wellthy Therapeutics. We'll be featuring leaders from across life sciences, health tech, and healthcare to explore how the power of digital therapeutics and software as a medical device can transform lives by addressing global, unmet clinical needs. Your host, Karine Soulat, will be joined by experts from Europe and around the world to understand the real power of DTx in changing the future for patients and improving health outcomes at scale.
So hello, Aline Noizet. Thank you for agreeing to join us as a guest on the DTx Circle podcast. We are very grateful for your time and look forward to an exciting and enlightening conversation. Aline, you are based in Barcelona, and your major work right now is to be a connector. Whatever area of digital health you are passionate about connecting people to another one and to new technologies. You have spent a number of years in Bayer G4A, Digital Health team, across 3 continents. Aline, can you tell me more about your role as a connector?
Sure. So I work for Digital Health Connector. So that's like how I define myself. And this is also the company that I created. So to like an umbrella for all the different activities that I do. So my passion is really to connect the dots in the healthcare, in the digital health ecosystem. So really connecting the different people to finally have an impact on the healthcare system.
Okay. And how did you come to be involved in digital health?
So that started really, so I've been in the industry for like 10 years and I work for Health 2.0, the mother company that was created by Matthew Holt and Indu Subaya like 15 years ago in San Francisco. And that conference was really focused on like showcasing the latest innovation in healthcare. So really focused on startups. And then I became involved with them organizing the European conferences. And so I've seen really like the evolution of the digital health, like health apps, solution for hospitals, involvement of pharma, insurance companies, etc. And I remember well, like, you know, seeing the evolution, like being flooded with health apps and people not really knowing what to do with them. It's like healthcare professionals, like, we're starting and looking at solutions like, yeah, but how do I choose a solution? There's like many out there. How do I know that they're safe for my patient? And the same for the consumers, right? If I wanted an app for like to follow my diabetes, for instance, or to take care of my health, like there were like thousands of apps on the app store. So how do you choose from that? And so I was actually very excited when like the DTx came up live like a few years ago, because for me it was really bringing an answer to that issue of having kind of an official stamp that could give like more confidence to the healthcare professionals and the consumers of a solution that was safe and validated by some kind of organization.
So what you're saying now is that the fact that there is a framework around DTx, like a regulatory framework and legal framework somehow, and quality management framework, this is really good to make sure to provide confidence for healthcare professionals as well as for consumers, you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you like healthcare professionals, like we know that healthcare is like a very like delicate sector. So you've got the life of your patient in your hands. So you want to make sure that the solution that you would be using or you would recommend your patient to use are safe, that they won't be harmed by the solution, that the data being shared are secured, etc. So yes, absolutely. For me, it's absolutely key.
That's very interesting about the safety profile of those DTx. But what is the role that you see for SAMD and DTx playing in the current shift in thinking beyond the pill?
So I remember, so you mentioned before, like I worked at Bayer a few years ago. And so part of my role there, so I was part of the G4 Grand Swaps program, the accelerator of Bayer. And the idea was really to talk to the different departments to understand their needs and then to scout for solutions that can bring an answer to those needs. And I remember when I was in Berlin specifically, I could really witness a change in the mentality of the pharma companies. So they were not really interested in looking for like a treatment, but they were looking for like holistic solutions that can really like accompany their patients around the pill, really like to offer the patients like a full experience. So it was not just about like giving them a treatment and that's it, but more to help them like to be like more compliant, to take their pills, to understand maybe why were they not taking the pills, so to have an effect on all the part around the patient. And yes, so that's where I see that the DTx can really help the digital solution, because now if you take like the case of DTx, for instance, they're available 24/7 from anywhere. And it means that it gives the healthcare professionals or the pharma company as well, if you think about like clinical trials, like more insights into the life of the patients. And you can understand better, like you can take a patient in his environment and understand what is he doing, what is not doing, what is a trigger, why is it not working, and to really give like valuable information, because those DTX are collecting data on a regular basis, and those data are very valuable to get feedback about a treatment and to personalize the treatment for the patient. Where I see also a benefits of those solutions, we're asking about the role. There's still some diseases, conditions today that don't have a treatment or not a known treatment, and that's where digital solution can really bring us a solution today. So we've seen, if you think about like IBS or Hashimoto disease, for instance, there's no known treatment today, but those patients have been like suffering for years. And there's companies now like be like Caracare for IBS or Ashiona for Hashimoto disease. They have been developing solutions that can really accompany the patients. So it's not bringing like a treatment, you use the solution and that's it, you cured. No, but it's really helping them to manage their symptoms, their disease on their everyday life. And the feedback have been absolutely amazing. And I think that's also a great opportunity for those software. That's where they can really help.
And there is one point you mentioned just before about collecting data. So I'm very interested in this part because very often on pharma industry, we are afraid to collect data because we are afraid to get information we're not allowed to have. Can you dig into this point a little bit?
Well, so if you take like the DTX, when they collect data, it's all like an anonymized and very, very safe. Like everything is regulated. That's where that regulation is very important, because it ensures that that collection of data is safe. And so maybe I know for years we've been talking about that, like the data protection, like making sure the data is safe. But from my personal perspective, I would be more interested in having my data collected to find an answer to my problem than to not having my data collected. So maybe I share quickly, like it was some years ago, I was at South by Southwest, that conference in Austin. We're having like a small discussion with a group of people. And that girl started sharing with us that she had a cancer when she was very young. And she was like a blonde girl, like yeah, she had like a typical profile. And she told us like they didn't want to, so she was going to the doctor and she was seeing like girls similar to her, and she realized that there was maybe like a common point between those girls who were having like developing the same cancer. And she was like, no, but please like collect my data, like I give you my data, but if you analyze the data from all those different persons, maybe you will find a treatment. It's like, my data is here, take it. So I think that's also, it's interesting to see the point of view from the patient. Sometimes they're really willing to share their data. I think for me, I agree with that. Like the weight of, if I give you my data, you will give me a treatment or find a solution for my problem, weighs more than my data being collected.
Yeah, that raises something really interesting, which is personalized care in a way. Like you gather a lot of information so you can see something which is common to everybody. But on the other side, also to collect personal data makes the DTX more personalized in a way. It's like a personalized care, and it's for more people.
Exactly.
Let's go back to HCP. We said that we need to have confidence in the DTX on the side of HCP as well as patient. I would ask you something. would you say that digital solutions can strengthen the HCP and patient relationship, or do you think it would reduce the human element of care?
I would say that it changes the relationship between the healthcare professional and the patient. It strengthens it. So if you think about a DTx, so they're collecting a lot of information about the patient, and that gives them like an overview of the patient over a period of time. So it's not just when you see the patient when he comes to the consultation, but it's in between visits. And if you think about Spain, for instance, when you go to the doctor, they have 6 minutes to see you. 6 minutes, like that's very short. Out of those 6 minutes, they spend maybe 3 minutes or four on the computer making notes. So there's only like a few minutes left. So advantage of those solutions is that it can really give you an overview. And then for me, when you go to the healthcare professionals, then you've got more like quality time, because the healthcare professionals ask the information collected from the app in advance and ideally integrated in the system. And you can really enjoy that time with the healthcare professional. So in that sense, for me, it strengthened it. And also the advantage of those solutions like DTx or the digital solution, that now more and more they include the option to contact the healthcare professionals when needed. So it can be synchronous, asynchronous, and that also gives peace of mind to the patient. Like if they have a doubt, maybe they can just like contact the healthcare professional with a quick message. So I think that's how the relation is being changed for good.
Yeah, and I think I like this point because very often we hear HCP or doctors saying, "I don't have time to answer all the questions of the patient in terms of side effect or doubt that the patient might have," and that the DTx, I mean, digital solution, whether DTx or not, can really help on this point. We didn't define at the beginning when we began to discuss about DTx. We just said that DTx was very regulated, and we didn't mention any difference between DTx and digital solution. Would you be able to provide a very simple way of mentioning what's specific about DTx compared to every digital solution? Sorry.
I can actually give you my simple definition of DTx. The way I explain it to people, I would explain it to my grandmother, and it's been quite efficient. So I say it's an app or software that can replace or complement a drug or a traditional treatment. And the difference between a DTx and the traditional digital health app is like two things. You need clinical validation, so like clinical trials in a clinical setting. And then what's very, very specific to DTx is you need, on top of that, validation in a real world setting. So what you're doing in the clinical setting, you do the same in real life. So when patients are using the solution every day, when they're at home in their own life, in their own settings, that collects some information, and it has to prove that it is working as well in their own setting than in the clinical setting.
Okay, so they have proven efficacy, or at least the claim they present are proven. And as you mentioned, it's in the real world, not in clinical trial only.
Exactly. It's really both of them, but the real world is really specific to the DTx. Yeah.
Interesting. How can we improve HCP and patient adoption of digital solution? Because we said it will improve the quality time on the consultation, but what we see mainly in Europe, at least, is that up to now the adoption is not quite there.
Yeah, so I love that question, because so about a year ago, I decided to do a PhD, and the topic of my PhD was exactly that. Like, why aren't healthcare professionals prescribing more apps, with the idea of what can we do for them to prescribe more? And so I changed a bit. I decided not to do my PhD, but I'm currently working on a project with ICE Global, so a research center based here in Barcelona, on a concrete project, and the idea is to develop an app for healthcare professionals. So it's really like a concrete project based on the idea that I have. And we just did a survey to specialists to understand the use of digital health intervention and apps. And with the idea, try why aren't they not using more apps, right? So first, I was actually quite surprised by the results. Like nearly 50% of them actually involve or prescribing or recommending apps, let's say. For Spain, I thought that was a very, very good number. And a lot of them are, recommending like every month to the patients. So that's really good. But like one point that came from them is that they would recommend more if they had more time in the visit with the patient. Maybe specific to Spain, as I was saying before, like 6 minutes is very short. But in general, yeah, like it takes time, especially if the patient in front of you is not very like tech savvy. Like you have to explain him how it works, right? So I think that would be one thing. And there's also the education. So education is very important, and this came up with conversations here with doctors as well in my community here. Like yes, they don't have time, but they also need to understand how those solutions are working. And I think many times you're afraid of something that you don't know, and they say, yeah, but what's the goal of those solutions? How are they working? How are they helping myself? Like how are they helping my patients? So really that I think we really need a lot of education around that point.
You were saying 50% of the HCP were recommending a solution. And do you have any idea on the amount of patients being adherent to their solution?
So that's actually the topic of the next survey that we are preparing. So first we did the healthcare professionals, and now we're preparing the survey for the patients. So I'm really happy to be back in a few months and to share all those insights.
Yeah, because I think in terms of digital solution, at the beginning, maybe if it's not like a burden for the patient, he will answer and he will use it. But if it comes for chronic disease, at least, if he has to use it all the time, I guess the less click he has to do, the less burden it represents, the better it is.
And I think it's also important to, when you develop such solution, like where you're a startup and you want to develop a solution like that, to understand very well, like who would be using your solution, like who is your persona, and to develop a solution that works for them, and also to involve them. And that's the same for healthcare professionals, like involve them in the development of those solutions. Because we still see too many apps who are arriving on the market and they don't find any buyers because they didn't include the healthcare professionals or patient in the solution, and the solution that they develop are not matching what the market is looking for. So having that insights and that co-creation with patients will really help to make sure that there's like a higher adoption of the solution, and really to understand where like the patient journey, how is that solution fitting into their journey, how is that impacting their life, what do they need, what are they looking for, etc.
How can we improve HCP adoption?
So yesterday, actually, I attended a very interesting session. So it's a program sponsored by the European Commission. It's called DISH, so the Digital Innovation Skills Helix. And it's really focused on that, like how can we increase the adoption of digital solutions for healthcare professionals? And I was really, really impressed by that event. Like I think it was fascinating. So the project has been going on for a few years already. So it's really around, there's 3 tools that they are developing in that program. So first is planning, then training, and then assessment. And they say really the key for success is to use those 3 tools together. And so that helix that they are talking about is 3 things. So the healthcare providers, the educational institutions, and the clusters. I mean, like the local clusters. And that's also the key for adoption, no? And they shared some use cases that they developed in different regions. So there are people from Denmark, Germany, from Spain, and the results, like adoptions and satisfaction, were like very, very high, like very like close to 100 every time. So I think this is really great. I'm really excited to see that project like expanding and going live. So yeah, I think you should really check that. So they're on Twitter. If you check like Dish, so DISH on Twitter, you can find some more information.
So we have to keep in mind planning, training, and assessment.
Exactly. And something very interesting that they were saying as well is to focus on those who are more like reluctant to use the solution. You know, when you talk about like, yeah. So if you talk to them, if you try to understand why they don't want to adopt the solution, or that's when you can get like the most outcome. Maybe in the assessment, like spend more time with them, maybe give them an extra assessment, or make sure there's like regular follow-up with those people.
That's interesting. What type of digital solution do you predict will be the biggest driver of widespread personalized care?
So I can think of two: mental health and chronic disease management. So when you think about the pandemic, for me, like, so telemedicine, we know was the big winner. So it was like people starting using it, adopting it. But really the second one for me is really like DTx, no? Those digital solution, because so from one day to the next, we all ended up being at home, locked down at home, without being able to leave the house, without being able to access the healthcare system. So there were many people, chronic patients, or people having like mental health conditions that necessitate regular support, that were left alone. Like they didn't have access to the healthcare professionals, or they didn't have that support anymore. And I think many people realize the importance of having that support in any time. And I think that's where the digital solution can really help. If you think about DTX, like since they're available 24/7 from anywhere, it can really provide that support that the patient need in between visits. And because it also collects information, it really, really helps to understand what has been happening during this time between the visits, and to adapt the treatment, to understand the triggers, maybe change the treatment or adapt it, etc. And maybe where I see also one therapeutic area that may be growing a lot is femtech. So having all those solutions developed especially for women and women's health. So we know that women's health is really growing. Like femtech, there's a movement. We said there will be it will represent a big opportunity in the coming years. The women are becoming, I think, more empowered. They want to take better care of their health, and those solutions can really help them to do that, to manage their health on the day to day. And something important is, like, we know that traditionally the drugs have been mainly developed for men, like the people in those focus groups or clinical trials were men. So if you think about cardiovascular, for instance, we don't really have a solution for women. And I think that's where the DTX can really bring personalized care for women in that aspect.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, by the way, because I felt also the symptoms of the disease. Very often, when we talk about cardiovascular issue, we provide symptoms that are really linked to the men, and we realized not far ago that the symptoms for a heart attack, for instance, might not be the same for a woman than for a man. So I think it's something to take into account, as you mentioned.
Exactly. But now I think that's where you can actually collect the symptoms and the data related to women specifically, and that can really help advance like the drug development, for instance.
We talked about confidence we talked about the definition of a DTX, the confidence we should have into DTX building or creation, that it's following like a regulatory space, and it's really well managed, let's say. And then we talked about the fact that it helps to improve a relationship between HCP and patient, that it can help also some patient that doesn't have any medicine, and that it can support and accompany some of these patients. What about the trust HCP have? Well, we mentioned that, by the way. I'm thinking, because we said that there is clinical study and on real world data that will help to make trust in the efficacy and safety of digital solutions. So if you had to summarize what's important to keep in mind when you launch a DTX, what would you say?
So I think for entrepreneurs who are looking at launching a DTX, one very important point is the intended use. What do they want the solution to do? And that's something like, if you go to a regulators, for instance, like if you want to see if your solution would be a medical device or not, that's what they're going to ask you. First question they're going to ask you, what's your intended use? And I think when you develop your solution, we're talking about it before, like what value do you want to bring to your audience? So who is your audience? Is it patient? Is it healthcare professionals? So if it's DTx, should be more a patient, but really understand well the person you're developing the solution to, the value that you want to bring, how is that fitting inside the patient journey for the patient. For the healthcare professionals, also very important, the integration within their system. How is that helping them in their the day-to-day? So that's also something that came in the dish session yesterday. They're saying that if the healthcare professionals are perceiving that the solution that you're trying to sell them or you want them to use will bring them more work, that they won't use it. Like they're already like overload. We don't talk so much about burnout here in Europe, but it is reality as it is in the US. And in US, it's like it's a big topic at all the conferences. But it's a reality. So they really need to see the solutions as a helper. It will just make their work easier. It will be like a decision support. It will save them time. It will make their work better. It will help them to offer better service to their patients. So that's really where you have to push. And I will repeat that because I think it's very important, but really like involve the healthcare professionals and the patient in the co-creation of the solution. Yeah, that would be really my the point to keep in mind.
And if I have a last question is, what will it bring to pharma industry or pharma company to propose a DTx or a software as a medical device?
Well, it's huge. Like if you see, for instance, the collaboration happening between pharma company and DTx, there's a lot. So like Gary Monk is publishing like once a year is publishing a map of the relationship or the partnerships between pharma and DTx. And there's a lot of them. And this is very good sign. I think there's a really good match between pharma companies and digital solution or DTx. So it can help them with the clinical trials, like in phase 2, for instance, can reduce the time of the phase 2. And the other thing is that because those DTx, those digital solutions, are collecting data on a regular basis, that's great insight for the pharma company. So it can help them to adjust the treatment. And I think it's also a great source of information to develop a new drug. Like if that helps them to identify your needs, well, they can develop like the next drug buster for the next years. If you think about the disease today who don't have a known treatment, that's a great opportunity for pharma companies to actually position themselves and to offer something to all those patients who need a solution to support the symptoms on an everyday basis.
So if I summarize, thank you, Aline, what you just said for pharma, it's like very interesting for them on phase 2, phase 3, because it reduced the time to get the information and it provides the possibility to get more information. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you said you are gathering information when you use a digital therapeutics. So then you can realize what are the unmet needs still and provide some new therapeutic or fine-tune your own drug. And finally, you say for the disease where we don't have any treatment yet, this is really helpful and it provides also some information that then in the future can help creating the right drug. Am I summarizing correctly or am I forgetting things?
No, I think on the last point, it's not so much to develop like a drug in the future, but to use the DTx as the treatment. So to use that digital solution to offer a treatment or support for those patients. That's where the treatment is. It is happening today, and that's what they would be offering to patients in need. And that can actually, I think this has been inspiring like other rare diseases groups or like companies working on rare diseases to look for DTx that can support like other groups of patients.
That's very fascinating, by the way. Thank you very much for your time, Aline. I have quick questions for you so the people can know you a little bit better. If I ask you, what's the best trip you've ever taken?
I would say Lombok. So Lombok is an island next to Bali. So it was my last big trip just before the pandemic, and it was a fantastic trip. So Lombok is like not as known as Bali, but it's like more like still very very natural. And I went on a 1 day trip. So I went there on my own, and I went with like the brother of the place where I was staying. He took me on a road trip for a day. Like before lunch, we went to the school where the other sister was working, and like I was like a star. Like everybody wanted to take picture, wanted to see me. Like it was great experience.
What's one question you wish I would have asked you, and how would you have answered?
So maybe you could have asked me what was I doing before healthcare, and I would have told you that I was helping men to fix their truck and sending them spare parts for their trucks.
All right. Thank you very much, Aline, for this time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the latest episode of the DTx Circle podcast by Wellthy Therapeutics. Information on how to find out more about our guests and the work that we do at Wellthy Therapeutics is available in the description below. And if you've enjoyed hearing from the latest and greatest in life sciences, DTx, and software as medical advice, please share, like, and subscribe. See you next time.